All right, well, I'm going to go ahead and call the meeting to order. It is 8:33. This is the State Board of Education monthly meeting, Wednesday, February 18th, 2026. And Suzanne, are you running the meeting this morning?
Yes, I am.
Thank you. Would you mind starting us off with a roll call?
I'll be happy to.
Thank you.
Brian Campion.
Here.
Mohammed Job.
Here.
Caleb Greenwood.
Here.
Tammy Colby.
Good morning.
Tom Lovett.
Here.
Brianna Marsh.
Here.
Cynthia Stewart.
Here.
Rich Werner.
Here.
Secretary Saunders. And Chair Samuelson.
Here. Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Are there any amendments to the agenda? I have one.
I have one too.
Okay.
I didn't know if I could get a couple minutes just to do a quick update on the State Aid for School Construction Advisory Board.
That would be great. Do you want us to put you in under committee updates?
Sure.
Great.
I'll go last.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, we will put you in. Thank you, Rich.
Thank you.
So my announcement is, well, first of all, I did get a message from Secretary Saunders saying that her meeting that she's currently in is running late. She'll be joining us around 9. The other thing is we have Katie Ballard providing her quarterly update for the Special Education Advisory Panel. She's got a commitment this morning, so I don't think she'll be available at her scheduled time. What I told her to do is if her timing works out, she's going to join us when she's able. And we've got kind of a short meeting this morning, so she'll try to join us. And I just told her that we would take her up whenever she appears. So just know that we've got a little flexibility there. And if we happen to finish before she's available, we will roll her to next month. So with that, I will turn it to public to be heard. If there are any members of the public who wish to address the board, you can raise your hand on the Teams platform or *5 if you're calling in. And I'm not seeing anyone at the moment, so I'm going to go ahead. I'll leave that agenda item open. Next up, I will entertain a motion to approve the draft meeting minutes from January 21st, 2026.
I'll make that motion to approve the draft minutes of the January 21st meeting.
Thank you, Rich. Is there a second?
Second. That seconds it.
Okay,
Tom,
I'll come
take it.
first.
Gotta get in there. Gotta get in there.
Any discussion? Okay, hearing none, all those in favor of approving our meeting minutes from January 21st, 2026, please raise your hand and signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed, please raise your hand and signify by saying nay. Any abstentions? Okay, the motion carries. Board announcements. I will say, I believe board members received an email from Sarah because I just ran out of time. We've got a couple of motions with regard to establishing the minimum class size. I have to say this right. The Class Size Minimums Implementation Committee, which is going to be the official nomenclature, and delegating to the Student Performance Standards consideration of the standards for statewide graduation requirements. Both of those motions are occurring later in the meeting, but I did have Sarah send the motion language to the board because now that we have Sarah helping us, it's a little bit more comprehensive.
Jennifer, when did she send that? And when did
Jennifer, I'm hitting send now.
Okay, all right.
Okay, I was gonna say,
Yeah.
I don't.
Yeah, sorry,
There
I
you
meant
go.
to do that this morning and I ran out of time. So my apologies, but thank you, Sarah.
Yeah, doing it now.
Thank you. Any other board announcements?
I have one.
Yes, Mohammed.
Mohammed is very excited for his team of multilingual liaisons at the Winooski School District for being awarded a Kids Safe Collaborative, which is happening on April 16th from 9:30 to 11:30 at the Doubletree Conference Center in South Burlington. This award is to recognize the team for all the wonderful work they do for the success of our children, students, and their safety and their well-being, which hugely contributes to their success academically.
So, and I'm sorry, Mohammed, I missed the beginning of that, but is this a team of administrators that's being
It's,
recognized?
No, the team of the multilingual liaisons at the Winooski School District, and I oversee or supervise that team myself.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
wonderful. That's a terrific honor.
Indeed, indeed. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. And thank you. Any other announcements from board members? Okay. Still not seeing any members of the public who wish to address the board. So Caleb, with that, I will turn it over to you for the student report.
All right. Good morning, everyone. Before I even start, congratulations, Mohammed, and your team. That's really awesome. I know you guys work super hard. I know you guys work very, very hard.
Thanks a lot, Caleb. Thank you.
Our theater production had their first weekend. They did it Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, I believe, if not just Friday, Saturday. I went opening night. They did an amazing job. It's Alice by Heart. So for those who don't know, I can read a quick summary, but so Alice by Heart is a musical, and it's inspired by Alice's Adventures in Wonderland, but it's set during the London Blitz in World War II. So it's this girl who just wants to escape their really tough reality by imagining Wonderland, but it's honestly kind of a sad story. It doesn't necessarily have the happiest ending because she's trying to escape the tough reality, but in the end she kind of has to accept it. So actors did an amazing job. Their choreography and everything is amazing. It's all done by one of our teachers. She's super, super good at it. She puts in a lot of time. And hopefully they have a great weekend next weekend. So our winter sports are also going. Our girls basketball has been doing very good. We are, I think, just about halfway through our third term already, which is crazy because it feels like it only started yesterday. But our progress reports are, I think, this Friday, and then we're on break all of next week. And next week I'll be getting my shoulder surgery done, so I'll be out of commission for a while, so no track for me this year. But it is very much needed, so I'm looking forward to getting it done. And hopefully I'll be fully recovered, which I should be by plan. I should be ready and fully recovered before I go to college, which so far I've heard back from 2. So I was admitted to UMass Boston as well as Virginia Tech so far.
All right, congratulations, Caleb. Those are exciting.
Thank you.
There's a lot less snow in Virginia.
Yeah. I mean, they weren't so fortunate this year. My friend is there right now and they canceled school, I think 3 or 4 days from that huge storm.
Yeah.
Caleb, what are you hoping to study, or if you know?
Yeah, I was admitted into Virginia Tech for international relations. So that realm of study.
Okay.
That's huge. Congrats and good luck with the surgery as well.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Yeah. Are you going to be in a sling when you get back?
Yeah, so we purposely got it scheduled it for this coming Monday because that's the start of my February break. Because I'm gonna have nerve blockers for, I think the surgeon said 4 days. So like basically all break. And once I get back into school, I'll be in a sling, depending on how fast I recover, like 3 to 4 weeks. And then I'll be doing PT for like a couple months.
Wow.
Because I tore my labrum. And then also some cartilage is missing. in my shoulder, so they're gonna repair that and also stabilize my shoulder.
Wow. It's good that you can schedule it over a break.
Yeah, I was really fortunate for that. I'm gonna have to learn how to write with my left hand for a little while though.
So I'm sorry that I don't live closer to you because Alice by Heart actually sounds, I would love to see it, but a little bit of a haul from here.
Yeah, I believe it.
All right, any other questions or comments for Caleb? And then Caleb, you need to make a decision for college by April 1st, is that? Or May 1st?
Yeah, I think May, but it also depends on, I think, each college.
Yeah. Well, that's an exciting decision. Can't wait to hear what you ultimately choose to do.
Thank you. I'm excited as well.
So I told my kids, this is not a bad problem to have. You can't go wrong.
Yeah, I'm really happy so far.
Thank you. Brianna, I'll turn it over to you.
Good morning, everyone. Sorry I'm not showing my face. I am actually sick, so I also don't sound too good either. But not much has been going on for our school lately, but our basketball program has been under the way, and they're actually doing really good this year. We've only lost a couple of games, and I think this season's actually nearing its end because we just had our girls' senior game last week, and I think our boys' senior game is this week, so that's our last home game of the season, and then they're going to go off into playoffs, which I'm very excited for them because it's looking pretty promising. And then for our theater program, that's still going along. We don't know, I'm not sure when the dates are going to be when we're going to actually do the play, but it's not for a little bit. Our director did just have to cancel some of the practices because this week is actually dedicated to Winter Carnival. So we do Spirit Week this week, so each day is dedicated to something else and you can dress up for it. And then our dance is actually Thursday, and then we do a Winter Carnival day on Friday, so that whole day is just dedicated to games where everyone can have fun and whatnot. And then one thing that has been huge for our school right now is there's been so much talk surrounding the phones right now because they're kind of thinking that they're going to put in place when we get back from break, which is next week, that everyone's going to have to put their phones in these pouches. And it's I'm pretty sure you guys have probably all heard of it, but it's basically where when you put your phone in it, it then locks because it's a magnet. And then at the end of the day, they can open them back up. But so everyone is very upset about that because they just
Are you on mute?
they just don't want to do it. And so many of the kids have already figured out ways how to get around it. So they're already trying to come up with ways to not participate in that. And then along with that, our school has also talked about taking away MacBooks for us. So some students have MacBooks, their own personal Chromebook. Computer and Apple Watches, and there's been some talk that they're gonna not allow us to have MacBooks, which I know some kids that do have those are very, very upset because they feel they should still have their computer, but the school just feels like it can still connect to your phone in a sense.
So is that the thinking with the MacBooks, is really trying to make sure that kids aren't, texting or getting online during school?
Yeah, I think that their whole thought process behind it is that with the MacBook, your phone is connected to it. So if you get a text on your phone, it's gonna show up on your MacBook. So they're afraid that kids are just gonna be texting or trying to get on some other social media platforms through their MacBook. But I know kids that have MacBooks are very upset about it because they just want to use it for school. Because I know I have a MacBook personally. And I'm a little upset about it because I don't even use it for social media. It's just that I use it because our school computers aren't the best. So it takes so long to do any school assignments. So I just know it's going to be hard.
All right. Thank you for the report. Do we have questions or comments for Brianna? All right. Thank you. Mohammed, it looked like you had a student in training.
Indeed. I pushed him away. I said, "No, right now, maybe later."
There's more room for another student report. All right, Brianna, thank you very much. And sorry you're not feeling well, but thank you for joining us this morning. All right, I am going to give one more glance over. Still don't see any members of the public who wish to address the board. We will have time again at the end of our meeting, so I'm going to close that agenda item B out for now. And this brings us to committee updates. So Tammy, I will start with you.
Good morning. The Standards Committee met and we reviewed the WIDA standards, which are, as just to remind the board, those are the standards for English learners. We had a nice discussion. We had a nice discussion with AOE. Stephanie Vogel came and talked with us about that. For now, we have tabled further work on the standards pending some questions and topics that we wanted some more information on, including, I think, importantly, the fact that the term that the student group English learner is not defined anywhere. And so it's unclear to whom those standards would apply, right? And so for them to be applied consistently across districts in the state, we would have to have a uniform definition. And that likely would need to be either in the EQS or some other or statute or something along those lines. So AOE is going to come back to us with a recommendation on a definition. We also had some discussion about clarifying in the agency's memo to us about the fact that English language learner instruction is first instruction. This isn't part of tiered systems of support. So a couple things that we asked for them to do, and they're going to get back to us. We're hoping that we'll have that information back to us in time for a March meeting, and that we'll be able to review and approve at that point.
Thank you, Tammy. Any committee members want to add anything to Tammy's report? All right. So I will provide the update from the Legislative Review Committee. We met on Monday. We had Senator Bongartz and Representative Conlon join us, kind of in sequential order, just to provide an update on current legislative issues and priorities. Both of them touched on the work of Act 73. Both of them described that things are rather fraught in the General Assembly right now. I think Senator Bongart said every day things change on a daily basis. Things are very fluid. I think Representative Conlon said that the process is a little bit murky at the moment. So, and I think this is kind of par for the course. We're still in the earlier stages of the legislative session, and I think there's always a flurry of activity at the end, but both of them did acknowledge, I mean, that this is really, these are hard decisions that our legislators have been tasked with thinking about, discussing, and resolving. So, a lot of gratitude to our elected leaders for taking on this challenge. Senator Bongartz also mentioned that there are a couple of acts that have passed out of the Senate. One is S-208, which is an act relating to standards for law enforcement identification, as well as S-209, which is an act relating to prohibiting civil arrest in sensitive locations. And they are currently working on S-227, which is an act related to creating immigration protocols in Vermont schools. And as Senator Bongartz described, these are sort of three interrelated acts that are really addressing what we're all seeing on the national stage with ICE coming into communities. And so just trying to provide some protections in various locations. So they are working on that. Both Senator Bongartz and Representative Conlon mentioned that last year, when the General Assembly gave to the state board the charge of coming up with recommendations with regard to schools that are small by necessity and sparse by necessity, and the focus was really on by necessity because small schools and sparse schools have already been defined in statute. it seems like the legislature intended that the state board was actually going to carry that work through to completion, as opposed to what the board did, which when you read Act 73, we did what was requested in the act. We provided a recommendation and we gave it back to the General Assembly. I actually did overhear, I believe it was Ledge Council came in and spoke with House Ed and acknowledged that there was a little bit of a disconnect in Act 73. So I think, you know, the ball is clearly in the legislature's court what to do with that recommendation from the State Board of Ed. It may come back to the state board. If it does, you know, we will address it at that point. But at least for now, we've done what we were asked to do, and they need to figure out what the next steps are. And Representative Conlon has also put up a proposed district map, which he acknowledged was a starting point. He was not intending that his map would be the ultimate, but he said that he's found it easier to put things up for committee members to respond to rather than, you know, trying to think in a vacuum. So he's been putting up maps, he's been putting up recommended language. He acknowledged that there's no consensus within his committee with regard to this work. And Senator Bongartz mentioned that his committee and Senate Ed has also been responding to these maps and language. So they're engaged in the work, but again, it sounds like really challenging discussions and hard decisions are being requested of committee members. So did I capture everything, Tammy and Ryan? I'll turn it to you if you want to add in anything.
On the by necessity, I think in our conversation, we made it clear, and Sarah, jump in on this, is, you know, we made it clear that, you know, under the current construct, that it would be the legislature's job to define by necessity, but there would still be rulemaking that would need to be done. And that was one of our recommendations, right? That they may define by necessity, but still we would need to come up with the criteria for implementing by necessity and rule as either as a part of the, probably as a part of the EQS. So there still would be work for the board to do, but under the current sort of statutory construct, we don't have a lane right now to actually define by necessity, right?
Thanks.
Sarah, do you want to add anything to that?
No, that's right. We made clear that they're going to need to direct the board and be clear about what work it has to do. Otherwise, yeah, we don't have a task at hand.
Yeah, but however, even if they do, if they decide to define necessity by necessity and not kick it back to us, we will still have an obligation there to develop rules that implement that, right? And so I think we also made that clear to them.
I think it depends on what they ultimately decide to do.
Yeah.
Whether there's work that we would need to.
Yeah, if they took, I guess, let me rephrase, if they took our recommendations on the face, there would still be work to do and rule. If they take it further, then maybe not.
Right, because they could just define it in statute and that would be the end of the story.
Yeah.
Well, if they defined it in statute, they would have to define all the other things, right? Which would be the process by which AOE would use to do, right? Like there are all these other pieces that we identified in our recommendations around the process and the timing and things along those lines. And so we didn't make recommendations on those kinds of implementation details. We only made a recommendation on the definition. So the implementation details, if they include in statute, then great. If they don't, and they just take our recommendations for the definition, there still is an implementation piece that has to be considered.
Right. So to be continued. All right. Any comments or questions from board members? And then after we met with Senator Bongartz and Representative Conlon, we had a committee debrief, and we had originally talked about having the committee meet the first and third Wednesdays of the month during the legislative session. Excuse me. Tammy, Brian, and I agreed that, you know, particularly with town meeting coming up, we are not going to have the meeting on March 4th. We are going to have our next meeting on March 16th. We may invite Senator Bongartz and Representative Conlon in again. for an update. And we also discussed inviting in Senator Ann Cummings, who is the chair of the Senate Finance Committee, as well as Representative Emily Kornheiser, who's the chair of House Ways and Means. Because again, a lot of this is so interconnected, with the finances and education and the funding formula. So I need to reach out to all of them to officially invite them to our meeting, but that's the plan for now. So with that, Rich, I will turn it over to you for an update from the State Aid for School Construction.
Yeah, thank you. So if you remember, we've talked, we had quite a little bit to do on legacy debt in our previous, before December 15th. So most of our stuff in the fall and early winter was devoted to that. We did have a meeting just recently, and I forget what day, and Suzanne could probably remind me, but we did kind of discuss how to move forward and what to move forward. And what we noticed is a lot of our duties is to advise the agency on the implementation. And so we're not sure what that means. If the agency is supposed to propose language and then we review it, or if we're supposed to propose language. So we are going to meet in the beginning of March and have try to get Secretary Saunders and somebody else from AOE to come in and have a discussion on how this all works. We also have a board member, or a member on the committee, I'm sorry, the group, to who reviewed all the charges, and kind of a lot of this stuff has been done by different groups in the past to kind of put together a reference sheet on what's been done and what hasn't been done, and which acts are part. There's so many different acts that kind of play into this. So we are, I know Suzanne sent out a doodle poll, and we are looking to meet sometime in the second or third week of March, first or second week of March. And that's kind of where we're at. Not a great update, but hopefully after this next meeting, we'll have a lot more guidance and kind of be more focused on what we're supposed to be doing and where we're supposed to go.
Thank you, Rich. Any questions for Rich?
Please don't ask any questions.
Well, I appreciate you taking this on and your leadership on the committee, Rich. It's not an easy job because it feels like there's a lot of disparate components to this that you guys are trying to tie together.
Yeah, maybe not as confusing as some of the other committees that the board is serving with. But I will say, yeah, it is very confusing. And what was really interesting is a lot of the people on this group have served on other very similar groups in the past. So there was one gentleman from the bond bank who was saying that, or talking about how to also maybe make the group more relevant. And so we're going to discuss that with the secretary, I'm sorry, and at our next meeting too. And there were some suggestions on some stuff that we could do to help if we're waiting for the AOE to present items to us to review. Then there are some other things maybe we could do just to keep the committee up to speed and maybe help inform and give some suggestions in the future too.
Great. Thank you. Okay, just giving a quick look. Zoe is with us. Good morning, Zoe.
Hello, good morning. I'll be on camera in just 10 minutes.
Okay. Now, are you ready to do the secretary report, or do you want us to give you a minute?
Do you mind if we give me like 10 minutes to?
No, that's totally fine.
Okay,
Yeah,
thank you.
Yeah, of course. Okay, so at this point, I'm going to go to agenda item J, and I had sent some information out to board members just to kind of explain what was going on. So as you know, Act 73, Section 6, I believe, asks the board to, it establishes class size minimums, and asks the board to create standards surrounding those class size minimums, and then to engage in rulemaking to update both Rule Series 2000, which is our education quality standards, and Rule Series 2200, which are our independent school program approval, to ensure compliance with those class size minimums. What I realized, and I apologize that I was, didn't connect the dots on this earlier, but I realized shortly before the Student Performance Standards Committee meeting, two things. One, the Student Performance Standards Committee is really looking at standards that arise pursuant to the board's authority under 16 VSA 164.9. So for instance, the WIDA standards that the committee is currently considering, that arises under 164.9. Common Core, similar thing. The class size minimums, those arise pursuant to a different statute. It's 16 VSA 165A9. A little confusing, but different statute. So they're not performance and content standards that arise under 164.9. So it was the wrong statutory mechanism, and frankly, we had never delegated that work to the committee regardless. In a similar vein, the statewide graduation requirements, that work does arise under the board's authority in 164.9, but again, we had never delegated that work to the committee. So I asked the committee to pause on that work just so that we could delegate things appropriately. And what I'm contemplating is that, first of all, we're going to stand up a new committee that is going to look at the class size minimums, and then we are going to delegate to the Student Performance Standards Committee the work of considering in the first instance the state graduation requirements. So that's what we're doing today. We're going to true everything up, and then committees will be able to do the work that is expected of them. So let me pause there. I've got a couple of resolutions that Sarah and I have worked on, and Sarah and I really took the opportunity to really clarify what the committees are doing, what the authority for the committees is, and just kind of wanted to put everything in one location just so that it's easier for board members, members of the public. We will have this record standing up these committees. So let me pause there, and then we can go through the resolution. Okay, not seeing any questions. So the first thing I'm going to take up is a resolution establishing the class size minimums implementation committee. Whereas effective July 1st, 2026, 16 VSA section 165A9 requires that schools comply with the class size minimum standards. And whereas the State Board of Education, State Board, is responsible for adopting rules pursuant to 3 VSA Chapter 25 to carry out its powers and duties as directed by the General Assembly and within the limitations of legislative intent. And whereas Act 73 of 2025, the Act, Section 6 sets average class size minimums for first grade, grades 2 through 5, grades 6 through 8, and grades 9 through 12 for all required content area classes, and limits the number of grade levels for multi-age classrooms for kindergarten through grade 8. And whereas the Act directs the State Board to amend Rule Series 2000, Education Quality Standards, and Rule Series 2200, Independent School Program Approval, to implement class size minimum standards that comply with the Act. Now therefore be it resolved that the State Board hereby establishes a special committee to be known as the Class Size Minimums Implementation Committee, or Committee, to offer amendments to relevant State Board rules to ensure compliance with the class size minimum standards set forth in the Act and 16 VSA Section 165A9, and be it further resolved that the committee shall, 1, develop and bring fully vetted recommendations, including draft rule language and supporting rationale, to the full State Board for its consideration and decision, and 2, oversee and manage on behalf of the State Board and subject to the State Board's ultimate authority, the rulemaking process related to these amendments through to its completion in compliance with 3 VSA Chapter 25, And be it further resolved that the committee shall consist of no more than 4 members of the state board appointed by the chair and may invite participation or consultation from representatives of the Vermont Agency of Education and other stakeholders as needed. And be it further resolved that the committee shall report regularly to the state board at its duly warned meetings and shall dissolve automatically upon the full state board's final adoption of the related rule amendments and completion of all associated directives of the Act Section 8 unless otherwise extended by vote of the state board. So that is the resolution. I do believe, Sarah, we need to vote on this, correct?
Yep.
Okay. So I will entertain a motion to adopt the resolution and then second, and then if we have, then we'll do discussion. Rich?
Yeah, I was going to make a motion so we could have discussion that we adopt the resolution as presented.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Is that Cynthia?
It is.
Thank you. All right. Any discussion?
Yeah, I do.
Yes. Yes.
So a couple things. One, and my memory is getting really poor, but have we ever done one of these resolutions for as like we are doing like this before? Is my first question. And my second question is, should we be adopting this because you have it on the agenda for establish a committee, but we had no resolution. It just came out to us after the meeting started, and it doesn't give the public a chance to see it because it wasn't part of our documents. And should we postpone a vote on this until the next meeting so that there could be input, because maybe somebody may have seen this and said, oh, I want to come hear about this or talk about this or give input. Those are my two questions or
Okay.
2 points of discussion, I guess.
Yeah, well, and thank you for posing that. So in answer to your first question, no, we have never done a resolution like this. I'll tell you the thinking behind it, and you know, experience is worth, hindsight's 2020. When we first stood up the Student Performance Standards Committee, I had drafted language, and I believe it's either August 24 and September 24, or September 24 and October 24. I had proposed language that clearly tied the Student Performance Standards Committee charge back to 16 VSA 164-9. And we had a discussion about it as a board. We postponed it, the decision, until the following meeting. And at the following meeting, there was a board member who made the motion, and the motion, because it was kind of made in an ad hoc fashion, it was not as clear as it otherwise might have been. And so looking back on that experience, and I think that was kind of part of the confusion with what happened a couple of weeks ago when I asked the committee to pause its work so that we could sort this out. The benefit of having this, universe of a resolution is that we made sure to make it clear and comprehensive. So that was the thinking behind that. As you read the resolution itself, a lot of this language is pulled directly from Act 73. So it just, and from statute, we're relevant. So that there wasn't like a whole lot of creative thinking that went into that. It's really more like reciting what's in statute and what's in law, so that it's clear for the board, clear for the members of the public, and we know that what is being presented is tied to the board's authority, which is why it's a little bit more meaty, perhaps, than motion standing up committees have been in the past. I will say, it was on the agenda to provide notice to members of the public that we were standing up a committee. I feel comfortable entertaining a vote on this, but that's, me speaking in my personal capacity, and I will certainly open the floor to other people. But Sarah, I see you have your hand raised.
Yes, as far as the warning and notice goes, you're fully compliant with open meeting law. Open meeting law only requires that you provide notice to the public of the topics that are to be discussed with sufficiency, and you've certainly done that. The language of the resolution isn't final until it's final. So If you were to tweak it now, it's not like a contract that you're going to be adopting that may require you, or that you would be ratifying, for example, that you may want to review, that you don't really have editing power or want to exercise. It would be improper to exercise editing power over like the ratification of a contract. So here you're completely fine with open meeting law. And with regard to the resolution versus just a motion, this really is more in the province of Robert's rules and the way that boards and committees work. And it was clear that there was a lot of confusion that kind of came up when Jennifer and I were talking about this a few weeks ago. So I recommended that just for the future, that when you do decide who's doing what work, when you have a lot of members, that we should just reduce it to writing. And a motion versus a resolution is a little less comprehensive. So this resolution is mainly just to be, like Jennifer said, to take what you were charged with in law and reduce it to writing, so that in your minutes and your board work, you guys can always go back and see what is a standing committee and what is a special committee. So this one is a special committee because you'll see that it ends when the work is done. The next resolution ratifies that you have a standing committee that has work that is continuous.
So I see Tom's hand raised, but Rich, your hand is also raised. Do you want to respond to that before we go to Tom?
No, let Tom go, and I'll go if nobody else wants to go, hasn't gone yet, and I'll go the second round.
Okay. All right.
Thank you.
Sure. Tom?
Yeah, thanks. I was listening carefully. It sounds like this committee would have to open up the 2000 series and the 2200 series in order to do its work. And I'm assuming that there would have to be at least 2000 series would be opened on the next agenda item. I'm wondering how that works, because it sounded like this committee, in order to get the rulemaking done, would have to open up both series of rules. And I think once the rules are open, the rules are open. And so I'm wondering how, if we adopted this resolution, how that would play out.
So the class size minimums, Act 73 directs the board to open up EQS and 2200 by August 1st of this year. Graduation requirements, Act 73 directs the board to open up EQS by August 1st, 2027. Which frankly, I will say, Tammy and I have both testified before House and Senate Ed and have pointed out, I mean, we all know opening up a rule series is long, involved. It takes a lot of time. And when I think about the, financial resources as well as board member capacity to contemplate opening up EQS twice in a 12-month period, it feels like a lot. I would personally be much happier if we could just open up EQS once instead of thinking about doing it once for class size minimums and then again for graduation requirements. But currently that's the way it's set up in Act 73. We have requested some clarity from the legislature, and both Senator Bongartz and Representative Conlon acknowledged that they need to get back to us, but whether they will, I don't know. And so at least for now, we're kind of stuck with the deadlines that are in Act 73. So two different chunks of work that at least right now, we can't really roll together, unfortunately. Sarah?
I think Rich wanted to go. I don't mind waiting, but I have something to say related to Tom's comment.
No, go ahead and finish, Tom.
Oh, okay. Well, first, I just want to clarify, just so everybody is crystal clear, that committees do not open rulemaking. The board opens rulemaking. And so when the board initiates rulemaking, what you're doing in this committee is you're asking this committee to oversee the work that a board is charged with during rulemaking, such as notice of the draft rules, responding to comments, the public hearings. The chair may ask, the chair of the committee or other members to join her at ICAR or LCAR or other things when you have to sort of explain what's happening. But I just wanted to make sure everyone knows that it's the board's authority in rulemaking and not any particular committee. This charges the committee also with bringing fully vetted recommendations. So that may be recommendations both for 2000 and for 2200. Jennifer, I would actually argue just a little bit that since the board opens up EQS, it depends on the pathways with this work and what you just mentioned about the legislature perhaps reconsidering the implementation deadline for class size standards. But there could be, just looking at math, because rulemaking takes about 8 months, there could be a path where one committee has come up and vetted its recommendations, brought it to the board, you've considered those, while another committee is also making recommendations on another part or other parts of EQS related to graduation requirements or other such things. And when the board initiates EQS, it may be able to marry those various amendments through one rulemaking process. But it's all going to depend on the timing and the synchronization of the work of those committees, at least with regard to EQS. So I don't know if that makes it clearer or less clear, but wanted to set that.
Thank you. Tom, does that answer your question?
I think it answers it as much as it can be answered. I think the answer to my question is yes. That was the answer that I heard. And so I have other concerns about what that looks like, and the amount of work that it would take to do both of those things at the same time. But I think I heard the answer. I think I understand the answer.
Okay. Rich?
Well, I like to say I really appreciate this because, you know, when we met in Whitingham, I really hate motion by committee, or, you know, when somebody starts to make a motion and 6 other people. So I think this makes it very clear. So I'm really good with that. I'm okay with Sarah's kind of saying that, you know, this meets all the public requirements. But again, I really think to be even more transparent, I would really like to see these go out ahead of time so people have a chance to look at them. But I won't argue that. And I'd like to also amend my motion, and I would like to add something to this. And what I'd like to see us do, and Jennifer, it's no shot at you or anything, but on the second to last paragraph where it says resolved that the committee shall consist of no more than 4 members of the state board appointed by the chair, I'd like to add after that, in consultation with the vice chair. And so that it's because we are a larger committee, and I think I have no problem with the chair doing the appointments, but I think I've always heard you in the past say that, you know, you've consulted with the vice chair, and I think we should make that as part of the rule so that it's more than just one person just putting the committee together. And I think you've done a great job with your committees, but I think in the future, if we do that consistently, then when you're no longer here and there's other chair and vice chairs, it may be something important to do. So my motion would be to amend my original motion to add in the second to last paragraph in consultation with the vice chair.
So my concern with that, if I may, that's a big
Well, it needs to be
shift.
hang on, Brian. It should be seconded, and if nobody seconds it, then it dies, and it's fine. We don't have to have a conversation about it. But that's your job, Jennifer. I'm sorry, I stepped on your toes.
Oh, that's okay. All right, so Rich made the motion. Is there a second? Mohammed?
I just feel like Brian had a word to say about the motion, and it could affect our feelings about what we are heading into.
Well, I guess the way I'm understanding it is under Robert's Rules of Orders, there was a motion, there was a second, we've had discussion. Then procedurally, Rich moved to amend the motion. So he's made a motion to amend, there has to be a second before we discuss the actual amendment. And so Brian was going to discuss the amendment, but if there's no second to the amendment, there's no discussion, and Rich's motion to amend fails, and then we revert back to the original motion.
Okay, so it sounds like people want to discuss. If they want to discuss, I'll second it.
Thank you, Tammy. Brian.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say, I mean, it really concerns me. I mean, this isn't standard policy to alter the way that the board operates, not only now, but going forward. I think this isn't where you would put this kind of policy shift, if you will, and again, in terms of the operations of the board. So I would encourage people not to support the motion. It can always be discussed at another time. It can certainly be raised when we look at again, the ins and outs of board policy within our own sort of roles and responsibilities. But I don't think this is a good step for us to take.
Thank you, Brian. Tammy?
Without commenting on the motion itself, what I would say to remind us all is that we've never done a resolution like this, per what Sarah said. So Brian, it's actually not a policy shift because we just haven't done it before, right? So this is the first time we've done it. So like I mean, that was part of Sarah's point, right? Like we've never done a resolution like this. So I don't know, since we've never written it down, there isn't anything written down to compare it to.
My point is, if we're going to say now that the chair, and perhaps I misunderstood the motion, now must consult with the vice chair, whoever that might be in the future, on committee appointments, formalizing that. My point is, this is not the space in which to make that change.
Sarah, I have a thought, but Sarah, you're first.
I think you're into the parliamentarian zone of the conversation rather than the policy part of the zone. And I was just going to try to pull up your rules. I mean, this board has adopted Robert's rules, and you have a rule of procedure, and it involves how committees are selected. And I'm trying to pull that up now. I would think that a change like this would be more appropriate to be done in changing your own internal operations as opposed to a piecemeal approach to this. I think it can be very complex and confusing if you do it in this piecemeal fashion. And this is probably more of a conversation around how you would change your operation and in your rules, how you adopt provisions like this.
Thank you. What I was going to say is, and it's been a while since I've looked at the statute, but I know that the statute doesn't even contemplate the board having a vice chair. I mean, this is something that we've done. So I think with regard to, we've never done a resolution before. I mean, this is substantively still the same. It's just in a different packaging. So there's nothing, it's more formal. But it doesn't change substantively what the board has done in the past. It's a different mechanism. Rich, your point does change substantively what the board has done. So let me just forecast, when this comes to a vote, I'm not going to vote because I don't think I should. I will also say, anecdotally, I did talk to Tammy about this, so I'm not personally, it doesn't affront me to think that, the board might want the chair to consult with the vice chair. But this is a substantive change that I think, Sarah, your point about doing it piecemeal, I hear that point. Rich, and then Tammy, and I just want to make sure I'm not missing anyone else. Okay.
Yeah, I'm sorry, and I disagree a little bit because this is kind of a big change. So I was just trying to set something in the future, And I was going to say, it's not, I know every time, Jennifer, you've talked to me, you said, yeah, I've talked to Tammy and, we're going to ask you to do this, or we're going to ask you to be on these committees. So I figured since we are finally going to do something a little bit more, with writing it out and putting it down, I thought it would be a good thing to add for the future. So that's all.
Thanks.
Not that I don't trust you, or I think you're gonna, stick me on a committee, out in the back, and I don't get to do anything fun. But
All right, thank you. Tammy?
Sarah, can I ask you a question? So, and this is just as my naivete on procedure, but so is it the case that in our rules, sort of our operating procedures right now, that there's no vote, right? So what this says is that the chair appoints. Is it the case that when we approve the resolution, we're also approving who the chair has appointed to the committee? Is that part of the vote? Because maybe that, I'm just thinking like maybe that's part of this, right? So that, right, like maybe that's the sign off, which says, well, here's the resolution, the chair's appointed these people, right? And as a part of the resolution, it's not just for people to be named in the resolution kind of a thing. You understand what I'm saying? Because maybe like that's not a consultation thing. Like, so that seems like that's within the lane. And Rich, I'm just trying to respond to what you're saying, your comments here too. So does that keep us within the lane? Does that satisfy? Does that
say that
satisfy you,
again.
Rich? Well, so
Yeah,
would it be that in the resolution we would say 4 people, I think it's 4 people, subject to approval of the board, right? Like who the people are.
So we've had that conversation before where
Yeah,
there's
and that's why I'm not remembering, Jennifer. That's why I'm asking Sarah. I don't remember where we landed on it. I know this is something we've talked about before, and maybe Rich, that's what you're remembering is that conversation, and I don't remember where we landed.
We landed on it's the chair's discretion. I mean, for better or for worse, I am the chair. You guys elect a chair. You delegate. You trust the chair to do the work of the board. And if you don't like what the chair is doing, then you vote for a new chair.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I remembered that conversation over here, and I didn't know if that needed to be part of the resolution or not. So, okay.
But remember, my amendment doesn't change that. The chair still appoints. All it says is the chair should consult with the vice chair.
So was there a question to
So
me?
we have a motion on the floor, right?
Yeah. Is there any further discussion on the amendment before we take a vote on the
Jennifer,
amendment?
the only thing I'd say is I think you really should vote. I mean, if this is impacting the board and has the potential to impact, the board significantly. So I would highly suggest that the chair has a vote on this.
But the chair can also decide to only vote to either create or break a tie too.
We'll leave it to her.
I agree.
Okay. Thank you. All right. If there's no further discussion, Suzanne, could you do a roll call, please?
Yes.
And this is, to be clear, this is just on the amendment. This is Rich's amendment to add in the language that the chair, in consultation with the vice chair, may will name the members of the board.
But Jennifer, we didn't get a second on that.
No, Tammy
We
seconded.
did. We ended up.
Oh, we
Yeah,
did.
yeah,
Okay.
Yeah.
Cynthia, I threw a second in because
Yep,
it seemed
yep,
like
I
people
did.
wanted to
Yeah,
discuss
yeah.
it. So,
Okay, sorry. All the conversation, I missed it.
Okay.
wait, let me ask Rich. Rich, do you still want to withdraw your motion based on the conversation? Or do you want to vote on your motion?
No, I'd like to vote.
Okay.
I love getting beat up.
I'm not getting beat up. I just want to make sure.
I've been on a lot of votes as chair, as Brian said, that, it's been everybody against me. So.
Okay. With no further ado, Suzanne, I turn it over to you.
Brian Campion,
No.
Mohammed Job,
Aye.
Caleb Greenwood,
Aye.
Tammy Colby,
Yes.
Tom Lovett,
No.
Cynthia Stewart,
No.
Rich Werner,
Aye.
Chair Samuelson. Will you be voting?
I am going to vote. I'm going to vote no. I don't take that decision lightly. But Brian, your point is well made. We do have a roles and responsibilities committee, and as we have discussed as a board, phase one of roles and responsibilities is we have delegated to Sarah the task of figuring out which rules, should stay with the board, which rules should not stay with the board. This is more of a, external thinking about roles and responsibilities vis-a-vis other organizations. Phase two of that is figuring out the roles and responsibilities of the board. And, the point is well taken. I believe it's Rule Series 1100 has not been updated for a very long time. It still refers to the commissioner. That is, the board's process. So, once we figure out the external roles and responsibilities, the next phase is then to work on our internal processes. So two things I would like to say to the board. One is, you guys, have me until leap year, which I find kind of funny, 2028. That's when I term off the board. When I think about what I want to look back on as my time on the board, I really want to get this cleaned up. I think the board has been sitting in a place where it's unclear to members of the public as well as members of the board, what we're doing and how we're doing it. I think, getting a, dedicated council has been really helpful in that regard. But I want to get this work done because I want to be able to look back at my time on the board and be like, hey, the agency got elevated to an agency in 2012, and the board was able to sort of finally figure out what the agency was keeping, what the State Board of Ed is keeping. I would like to be a part of that work. The second thing I will say to you is, personally, my pledge to you as chair of this board is that I will continue to consult with the chair, or the vice chair, I'm sorry. Tammy and I think have a good working relationship, try to keep those lines of communication. Can't speak for future chairs, and Rich, your point is well taken, but I pledge to each of you that I will continue to do that. Hopefully that will assuage any concerns about that. So with that, we revert to the original motion, which is to approve the resolution. Is there any further discussion on that? Hearing none. All those, well, what the heck? Let's do a roll call. Suzanne, if you don't mind.
Sure, thank you.
Thank you.
Brian Campion,
I'm sorry, can I ask a question? Sorry. Are we voting on both resolutions at the same time? I'm just wondering whether or not
No.
we should break them apart and vote on them
They are broken
separately.
apart. They're two different agenda items.
Two different agenda items. So the vote
this is just
for.
this is the resolution for class size minimums.
Okay, that's what I was clarifying. I'm like, wait,
Yeah.
what are we voting on?
Yeah.
Okay, so this is the resolution for class size minimums that we're taking the roll call on.
Correct.
Yes.
Brian Campion,
Yes.
thank you.
Thank you.
Mohammed Joe,
Aye.
Caleb Greenwood,
Aye.
Tammy Colby,
Yes.
Tom Lovett,
Yes.
Cynthia Stewart,
Yes.
Rich Werner,
Yes.
Chair Samuelson. Will you be voting?
Yes, and yes. Okay. Thank you. So we have established the class size minimums implementation committee, which hopefully we will shorten that to something a little bit that's less of a mouthful. I would like to appoint the following board members to the committee. Brian, who I'm going to ask to chair the committee, Tammy, Tom, and Brianna. Okay. So that takes us through agenda item J. Agenda item K, which is delegating the work of state graduation requirements to the Student Performance Standards Committee, is somewhat related to this, but I'm wondering if we should pause and turn it. I don't see Katie with us yet, but Zoe, I don't know what your schedule is. If you want to have us go back to you before we take up statewide graduation requirements.
Certainly, I'd be happy to provide my update.
Great.
Hi, good morning. For the Secretary's update, I'll be brief and just share a few updates across a couple of items. One, I want to preview that this week, the Agency of Education will be releasing our annual snapshot and state report card. This also coincides with the 3-year cycle by which we are required to identify schools for comprehensive and targeted support. For this cycle, the agency has increased the level of support that we will be providing related to school improvement efforts. And this has been outlined within the action plan that we have shared with the US Ed in response to our recent monitoring visit. So those schools that have been identified for comprehensive and targeted support have already met with our team at the agency, and we are reviewing their data to identify root cause challenges and to support with the implementation of evidence-based practices. The schools that have been identified for comprehensive support will also benefit from Title I 1003 school improvement funds to support their efforts in driving and elevating performance opportunities and outcomes for students. So this is part of our effort to stay focused on continuous improvement. This is a partnership and an opportunity for us to also identify promising practices across our state network so we can learn from those systems and scale those effective strategies to drive performance improvement across the state. Relatedly, there are a few other reports that we will be producing this month. One additional report will be providing an update on the implementation of Act 139 and sharing our baseline results related to literacy, along with the implementation of the screening tools and practices in schools that was required through that new legislation. Additionally, within that report, we will be outlining our efforts related to Read Vermont, some of the impacts that we've been able to achieve thus far, and the plans ahead to partner with our schools and districts in promoting literacy outcomes. Additionally, there are a number of other legislative reports that will be provided, including a dual enrollment report, an annual review of pre-kindergarten, and additionally, we will share findings from the beta test for the education quality standards and district quality standards. So I will share those reports in the coming weeks with you for your visibility. We continue to be focused on driving our strategic planning process. We have launched our steering committees. We are really pleased by the level of participation and engagement from educators and partners across the state of Vermont who are all interested and willing to collaborators to ensure that the work we're doing at the agency is really aligned to the realities on the ground, and that the goals that we're setting are both ambitious and feasible, and that the work we're laying out will really drive performance improvement and add value in supporting our statewide efforts to elevate our performance in a variety of different areas. And we are taking a holistic approach in setting goals across the 5 strategic pillars, and always monitoring our progress in terms of advancing those goals. So we laid out a work plan with the steering committees to orient them to the roles and responsibilities of the steering committee. They will be involved in helping to shape the statewide vision for education in Vermont, establishing multi-year targets for the goals within each of the priority areas, and also providing input around some of the strategies that we will be rolling out to ensure that there is coherence around those strategies, and again, that they're designed in a way to add value and support to our schools and districts. Additionally, just I wanted to share a few updates that can be supportive of the work that you all are engaged in with your committees. So for the small class implementation committee, we have published a memo with working definitions of those class size minimums. We were really clear in working with the field that this does not supersede the rulemaking that will occur with the state board, and recognize that there may be some revisions that occur through your process. But it is our hope that these working definitions will be supportive of your initial engagement with identifying the class size minimum. So that is a resource to you, and know that you will continue to engage others. Related to the graduation requirements, which I know is a topic that you will address after my remarks, did want to note that we are in conversation with US Ed. I've shared previously that the monitoring visit from US Ed identified uneven rigor with our graduation requirements, which is really part of the momentum and the impetus to move towards statewide graduation requirements. We have submitted an action plan. US Ed is aware that legislation has been passed and that there is a path in place in order to for the state board to finalize those graduation requirements. We have received an early indication from US Ed that they're concerned about the timeline and would like for that timeline to be accelerated. So just want to point you again to the recommendation that we have in the graduation proposal to actually finalize those requirements by December of 2026. So that's both important to comply with the requirements of US Ed, and even more important as we think about the work that schools and districts need to do to operationalize those requirements to support, course offerings. So just want to share that and reinforce our recommendation of that December 2026 as you're thinking about your work plan. And then related to the legislative committee, just briefly share, we continue to be a partner and a resource to committees and sharing data and research and also sharing realities of the ground to guide informed policy making. So related to the maps that are being reviewed in various committees, we have provided some guiding principles to consider as those committees are engaged in earnest in evaluating those district configurations. Our point of emphasis is really connecting this to the larger comprehensive reform efforts and connecting governance, funding, and quality, and recognizing that there needs to be a review of how changes to governance impact funding and quality. Related to the foundation formula, we are continuing to provide data and cooperating with the Joint Fiscal Office to ensure that we're all clear on those assumptions as JFO finalizes the foundation funding formula for the state. The Joint Fiscal Office has contracted with American Institutes of Research to be their lead researcher, and we have met with them to share data and resources with those lead researchers as they proceed in making those final recommendations for the base amount and the weights, along with any other considerations around the overall funding system. Additionally, as we have shared previously, we are required to provide some recommendations and considerations around the movement from the census block funding to the weighted special education funding model that's proposed in Act 73. As we noted in our earlier report, we felt we needed some additional resources to respond to the requirements of the legislature. So we are actually going to produce a separate report just as a literature review to evaluate those conditions. Our focus within that work is really more about implementation considerations from an agency, and we'll continue to share all the information with JFO as we work forward to create alignment. Additionally, in terms of the key priorities around career and technical education and chronic absenteeism, legislative language bills have been introduced to both support universal access to CTE along with chronic absenteeism reform and clarifying the definition. So that work is underway, and we continue to be supportive in committee of working through questions that our legislators have as they move forward with policymaking decisions. So just wanted to share that as the legislative committee continues its work to give visibility to how we are engaged with the legislator and providing data and research and support in their decision making for this session. So that would conclude my updates for today.
Thank you, Zoe. Tammy, I see your hand is raised.
Yeah. Hey, I just wanted to follow up on a question that Tom asked at our last meeting about who was on your advisory group for the class size minimums. I know he specifically asked if an independent school representative from the independent schools was involved in that discussion. And I think in general, we had asked for a list of individuals who are on your advisory group, and I don't think that we've seen that list. And I know I heard you reference that group again today. So it'd be helpful if you could share that with us.
Sure, we can follow up with the list of the working group members. So I would clarify that the way we established this was absolutely as a working group. And so as we proceed with our work, the steering committees are really designed to help us to drive kind of that strategic alignment statewide. We also have working groups that are established that are really focused more on emergent and immediate needs to provide guidance. And so those working groups kind of are formed from a short-term basis to support kind of larger efforts in alignment with broader goals. But we can certainly follow up with the list of those that were part of the working group, and would recommend that as you commence your work, that there's broader engagement that you can incorporate from different stakeholders if it's not fully representative of the perspectives that need to be at the table.
As a working group, did it meet once or multiple times? Or I think now I'm feeling a little confused.
Yeah. So again, this was a direct response to a need from the field. We were receiving a lot of inquiries from our superintendents and business managers to give some initial guidance for this budgeting cycle. And so the way that we work always as an agency is we pull together a number of experts across the field to help us identify where there are areas of ambiguity and try to achieve some consensus to establish those working definitions. And that's exactly what we did in this instance. And so we pulled together a team to provide some of those initial considerations. They did meet several times. We sent it out in terms of our channels of communication to invite participation in that committee. And we were really clear that this working group is established to identify some preliminary definitions to guide the work, and that this will be a starting point as the State Board of Education really looks into rulemaking to make those determinations and provide clearer guidance as they move forward.
And you're referencing the guidance that you put out on February 6th, correct? Which is after the budgeting cycle. Or was there other guidance that came out?
Yeah, so we were working with the field in providing some of those initial guidance. And then, yes, we did document those working definitions. Those are helpful as the superintendents are working with their school boards as they kind of evaluate different budgeting adjustments that may need to be required as we move forward with approval of those budgets. So I think we've all recognized from the very beginning that there was a timing issue related to the rulemaking for class size minimums and when districts actually needed to make some decisions. And so this is just a reference and we share it with you to begin your work. Also knowing that this is a process to get into alignment with class size as is outlined within Act 73. So
great. It'd be great to see the list of the working group members. Thanks.
Sure.
I put my hand up, but maybe I'm the only person. Zoe, did I hear you say with regard to U.S. Department of Ed that there's a request or a suggestion that graduation requirements be accelerated? State Board of Ed has to reopen EQS by August 1st, 2027, but your suggestion is that that actually come up much sooner. Did I hear that right?
We have not yet received formal documentation from USED critiquing our action plan. However, they have signaled to us concern with the timeline. That's part of the reason that in our proposal to you, we did recommend an accelerated approach, which would finalize those requirements by December of 2026. We expect to receive some formal documentation from USED in the coming weeks, but I just wanted to make mention of that because that has been signaled in our conversations with USED, their concern with the timeline. But it does still comport with the recommendations that we put forward in the proposal, because in addition to a compliance requirement with USED, we've heard from the field that it'd be really important to have clarity around these requirements as early as possible.
Right. So, and I'm just thinking, back to earlier in the meeting, and I can't remember if you were with us then or not, but, that Act 73 has the State Board of Ed opening EQS, once for class size minimums and then again for graduation requirements. But it sounds like, based on what you're saying, there's the hope that maybe graduation requirements could be accelerated and that conceptually EQS could be opened once to accomplish both of those requirements in Act 73.
Sure. I think the ultimate hope is that both could be accelerated, right? Both are really critical to inform the work that's happening in the field. As we mentioned with the class size, those are just working definitions, and that was in response to kind of an immediate request. But the field is really looking for that clarity for budgeting. And so I would just hope that as you are, evaluating your work plan, looking at the possibility of accelerating both the class size and the graduation requirements to support with the transition planning. And in case of grad requirements.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah,
Can I ask you a
sure.
question? In your communication with Ed, if the state board had adopted the standards, right, but we had not finalize that through the rulemaking process. So the board has made, right? So we're about to open the rules, but the standards we've adopted them, right? I believe that would satisfy Ed. Is that your understanding as well? Or are you suggesting that that Ed is going to demand us have this all the way through the rulemaking process by the end of the year?
So we are in conversations with USAID.
Okay.
They know that we're being proactive. I'm just signaling that there is a concern around the timeline, and that concern around the timeline is also felt within the field. And so to the greatest extent possible, right, trying to get to that December 26th would be advantageous for everyone.
It would be helpful maybe if you had the opportunity to socialize the idea that there could be a distinction between the state board adopting the standards and the final rulemaking process with Ed. My experience has been if you make that clarification, that might help.
So, we're working with them, and I think this is the phase where it's really critical to be transparent around the process and the timeline. But I just wanted to signal that early so that it could inform your planning. But yeah, thank you for the question.
Thanks. Any other questions for Zoe? All right. Well, thank you very much. Okay. And I don't think that we have Katie Ballard with us. I'm just double checking here. Okay, so I'm going to pick up agenda item K. Again, this is going to feel somewhat similar to the class size minimums, but slightly different. So the statewide graduation requirement standards, those do arise under the board's authority in 16 VSA 164-9. So we established the Student Performance Standards Committee back in the fall of 2024. The resolution that's in front of you, again, is just looking to clean up the language because, again, the ad hoc motion language that got voted on at that meeting could have been clearer. So this resolution, first of all, clarifies, the board's authority under 164-9 to consider standards, and clearly delegates the graduation requirements standards to the Student Performance Standards Committee. So the resolution, again, is just cleaning up the language. So again, there's greater clarity for board members, members of the public, just to, tie our work back to the authorizing statute, and then clearly delegating to the committee the work of developing recommendations with regard to the statewide graduation requirements. So let me pause there. Are there any questions?
I'll make a motion to adopt the resolution.
Shall I read it first?
No.
I think I would like to read it, just, so that it's on the record. And if there are members of the public who are listening, they know what we're adopting. So I can read it now, or we can make a motion, second it, and then I'll read it under discussion.
Oh, well, I'll make a
Second it.
motion.
I think it's
Okay.
appropriate to read it now. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so this is a resolution ratifying the charge and authorizing specific work of the Student Performance Standards Committee. Whereas the State Board of Education, State Board, at its September 18th, 2024 meeting, changed the name of the committee, now known as the Student Performance Standards Committee, to its current name, and authorized it to develop recommendations for the full board to consider pursuant to 16 VSA 164-9 to implement and continually update standards for student performance in appropriate content areas and at appropriate intervals in the continuum from kindergarten to grade 12, and methods of assessment to determine attainment of standards for student performance. And whereas Act 73 of 2025, the Act, Section 8, directs the State Board to adopt standards for statewide graduation requirements based on recommendations from the Vermont Agency of Education, the agency, which shall take effect beginning in the 2027-2028 school year for the graduating class of 2031 and every graduating class thereafter. And whereas the State Board has received recommendations from the agency regarding statewide graduation requirements in furtherance of this work, and whereas the Act directs the State Board on or before July 1st, 2027 to initiate rulemaking to amend Rule Series 2000 Education Quality Standards pursuant to 3 VSA Chapter 25 to adopt statewide graduation requirements based on standards adopted by the State Board. Now therefore be it resolved that the State Board hereby ratifies the charge of the Student Performance Standards Committee and authorizes it to develop recommendations for the full board to consider pursuant to 16 VSA Section 164-9 to implement and continually update standards for student performance in appropriate content areas and at appropriate intervals in the continuum from kindergarten to grade 12, and methods of assessment to determine attainment of the standards for student performance. And be it further resolved that the committee shall, 1, review, consider, and incorporate as it deems appropriate recommendations for standards for statewide graduation requirements received from the agency, as well as public comment received from other individuals and organizations with relevant expertise or interest, and 2, develop and bring fully vetted recommendations, including draft statewide graduation standards for adoption to the full State Board for its consideration and decision, and 3, on or before July 1st, 2027, offer recommended amendments, if any, to State Board Rule Series 2000 Education Quality Standards to require that schools implement the required standards for graduation adopted by the State Board herein, and be it further resolved that the committee shall consist of no more than 4 members of the State Board appointed by the chair and may invite participation or consultation from representatives of the agency and other stakeholders as needed, and be it further resolved that the committee shall report regularly to the State Board at its duly warned meetings and shall continue to exist as a standing committee of the board unless otherwise dissolved by vote of the State Board. So that is the resolution. Rich has made the motion. Is there a second?
Cynthia seconded it.
Cynthia seconded. Okay, thank you. Any discussion? Okay, hearing none. Suzanne, I'm going to ask you to do a roll call, please.
Okay. Brian Campion,
Yes.
Mohammed Joe,
Aye.
Caleb Greenwood,
Aye.
Tammy Colby,
Yes.
Tom Lovett,
Yes.
Cynthia Stewart,
Yes.
Rich Warner.
Aye.
Chair Samuelson, will you be voting?
Yes, in the affirmative.
Thank you.
Thank you. And just as a reminder, the committee membership has not changed. We have Tammy, who is serving as the chair, and joined by Mohammed, Tom, and Caleb. Okay, thank you. Well, this brings us to future meeting planning. I think we're about to get really busy, but this is what I have on my list. We'll have secretary report Independent school approvals, my guess is that we might have extra schools in our March meeting because the committee was not able to meet in February. But we will take up the schools that come before us. We'll have committee updates from student performance standards, legislative review, class size minimums. Rich, might there be an update? Yes. From school construction. Let me just add that to my list. State aid for school construction. It looks like we will be getting the SEEP update in March because, again, I think the timing just didn't work out for Katie to join us today. And Sarah, I'm wondering, Sarah had discussed when she first came on as the board's attorney that she could do sort of mini trainings for the board. Not to throw you on the spot, but that might be, you know, if we've got time on our agenda, if you might want to put something together for the board.
Yeah, I do. As part of my practice, I do trainings for some of our clients, particularly a lot of municipal boards on things like Public Records Act, open meeting law, ethics, a variety of things, board governance, duties of a board, things like that. So if board wants to hear one of those topics, some of those I would coordinate, like public records, I'd need to coordinate with the agency because they have, you know, specific processes they have to follow to support the board and, you know, public records requests. But if any of those topics are of interest, I can provide a mini training.
Board members, anything that kind of rises to the top there? Open meeting law?
So, Sarah, I'm curious, you know, and Jennifer, just building on the comment you said earlier about, you know, and I'm forgetting the rule number, is it 1100 or 1000 or, you know, this thing that has to do, it might be good to just talk through what's in there and use this as an opportunity, both a training opportunity, but also an opportunity for the board to start to think strategically about how that might be revised.
Procedure, yeah. As I'm doing the work around what rules should be sunsetted, what rules you know, need to be updated or shifted, I've definitely looked at that rule, particularly 1200.
1200.
And I'll reserve sort of final counsel on that, but where I have it in the bucket of things that, you know, typically you wouldn't adopt this procedure, like the fact that you're doing Robert's Rules of Order and the way that you just do some of your work. That's really unusual to be in a rule.
Yeah.
And so, you know, if you want, I can accelerate, you know, a focus on that and say, here's what the default is for public bodies under the open meeting law and under, you know, the various statutory constructions that we have and the 164.
Yeah. Well, I think that raises another question for me. I don't know that I understood that you were doing all that work. And so maybe on our next agenda, for our next meeting agenda, Jennifer, we could have an update from you and Sarah talking about the work that's being done and reorganizing the rules. That would be really helpful to understand sort of what that looks like. And I didn't realize that we were actually doing that work. I guess I thought that would come through the Rules and Responsibilities Committee.
Well, I think that, and Sarah and I have not had a conversation about this. Just want to put that out there.
Okay.
She has been chipping through, you know, looking at the rules. And I think is that, as we all know, the rules are voluminous and it's not just confined. I mean, first of all, there's our rules, but I think also Sarah's looking at statute generally. And there are obligations of the State Board of Ed, you know, beyond what's in 16 VSA 164 and 165. So she's kind of pulling all of that together too. I have not asked Sarah to provide a report yet because I've not heard from Sarah that she has completed this comprehensive review. So I think.
So can I clarify? You've asked Sarah to do a comprehensive review?
Well, that was part of her charge.
I didn't know.
No, that was part of her charge in her contract.
Right. Okay. So I knew there was a contract, but I didn't. So how did we decide what work
that was
Sarah's
in the legislature?
Doing?
The legislature, gave money to the state board to.
No, I understand that. I was part of that conversation. I just didn't realize that we had given Sarah a very specific scope of work. And I don't think the full board has discussed that. And I know it didn't come before the Roles and Responsibilities Committee. So like, I'm just, what questions are we trying to answer right now? What's the work that's been done? What's the budget for that particular piece of work?
We can put that on an agenda item. I'm happy to sort of summarize.
Yeah,
what that was.
it seems like something the board should hear about.
Yep. On the first meeting, I think I outlined the first time I joined you what my work would be and how I would receive directives from a body. But we can certainly pull that together and give you an update on what that timeline looks like.
Yeah. And with regard to reviewing Rule Series 1200, I think that would be good for, informational purposes. And I think, it would be helpful to get board member feedback in terms of, well, hey, commissioner is no longer the commissioner, like this should be secretary. But I don't think we are actually at the point where we are ready to open up Rule Series 1200 because we still don't, wait, hold on, because we don't know the universe in which we're operating. So that goes back to the work that Sarah's doing now of kind of figuring out what is the landscape, because that's not something that has come before the board. And so she's putting all of that together. And I do know, Tammy, that last time you and I had our sort of debrief with House Ed after our January full state board meeting, Representative Conlon had suggested having Sarah come in and talk about providing an update on the work that she was doing, pursuant to Act 73 to really look at the rules and, where she is in her plan in terms of recommending to the board and what work the board will be doing to decide what rules we should keep, what rules should be sunsetted, what rules should be delegated to other agencies.
And Sarah does terrific work, so don't get me wrong on that. But before we're presenting anything to the legislature, the full board should hear that and we should have a conversation about that. So I think that's point number one. Point number two is we started a strategic process in August 2024 where we were going to talk about standard operating procedures, and that, to Sarah's point, a lot of this stuff doesn't belong in rule, it actually belongs in SOPs, right? And I'm suggesting also, as an aside, we need to return to that because it's actually come up in Brian's comment today too, right? We don't have this stuff written down.
Right, and that's what I was saying earlier, where first of all, we need to do external, our relationship vis-a-vis other organizations, and then we need to do internal work.
Going on here. I think we got two things going on here. Is one, it sounds like Sarah is doing a lot of interesting and important work. I think it would be important for the board to understand where that work is and what she's learning and keep us abreast of that. And then two, I think we also, if that particular rule is part of all of this, I think we also need to have a complementary process around standard operating procedures, right?
But
so
again,
that we can have that conversation, go back and forth. And later, in August 2024, the board committed to doing that work. And we haven't taken it back up.
But this is a sequential process, so we only just got funding for an attorney to help us do that work.
No, Jennifer, go back to the Roles and Responsibilities Committee meetings of fall 2024, where we started to take up that work and you asked us to stop.
Correct.
So no, that's not the case. We actually did start that work on the Roles and Responsibilities Committee, and that work around standard operating procedures is not rule. To Sarah's point, it's not rule. It's standard operating procedures, and that's work that we should be doing.
Right, but my point that I made then, and I'm going to say it again, is that it's hard to craft standard operating procedures if we don't know the lane in which we live. So
we know the lane in which we're going to live, right? We can't stay in perpetual limbo waiting for the legislature to make some edict about what the state board is and is not going to do, right?
Tammy,
We've been in this lane since 2012.
This is why we have Sarah. We have funding to go through the rules and figure out.
I'm not talking about the rules. I'm talking about standard operating procedures.
I am talking about the rules.
Well, that's what I'm saying. We're talking about two different things.
Okay, but once we figure out what rules we're keeping, then we can figure out the world in which we live. And so it's hard for me to come up with standard operating procedures that guide the board's work if it's not clear what work the board is doing. That's my point.
Procedures around chair versus vice chair has nothing to do with the rules. Standard operating procedures are how we do our work. Those operating procedures in large part should be agnostic to what rules we have and what rules we don't have. And that was what we agreed to at the August 2024 meeting. And we have not returned back to that. And just this morning, we had a conversation related to that where this is unclear. And so I understand, and I get it. Yes, we need to do this rules overhaul. I've been with you in the state legislature arguing for that. Our canon of rules is outdated. It needs to be simplified. We need to do all those things. But the board also has to operate.
And the board is
that
operating.
Rule, and a lot of that stuff is in that particular rule that, like, we shouldn't have Robert's Rules of Order in that rule, right? But if that rule is going to go away, which it probably is, regardless of whether it does or does not, we still have to have standard operating procedures, right? Lots of us serve on lots of boards. I mean, that's just how boards operate.
I understand. And I do think that we have a very high functioning board, and we do have
But that's not what the board agreed to in August.
Tammy,
in
hold
August
on, hold
2024,
on.
we agreed that we were going to do this.
Tammy, could you let Jennifer finish, please? Because it's getting hard to understand the back and forth.
So you can go back and read the minutes, Tammy. We put that work that we started in the August 2024 retreat. We put that into roles and responsibilities, and roles and responsibilities decided that we needed funding to help us figure out the work that we did. Go back and read the minutes. The work that we were doing, and now we have an attorney who's doing the work. And so there is a process that has been in place that started in August 2024, and we are going according to that plan. So the work has not been paused.
I'll pull together the stuff and we can talk about it another time.
Sarah?
I was just going to say, I'm happy just to take this and we can make it an agenda item to talk about what my work is. And I can just give you an update on how I see the work plan evolving.
Great,
if you want.
thank you.
Yep. But that, to be clear, Sarah, your work plan is with respect to the rules, correct?
No, and I'm happy to provide the whole update and an agenda item.
So you're working on standard operating procedures for the board too?
My role is also as general counsel to the board. So I have a very broad role under the contract. And I'm happy to
wait,
go
let me
through
clarify.
that.
You're working on standard operating procedures for the board and you're working on revamping the rules?
I am not currently working on standard operating procedures, but it does come within my contract of work to be assigned.
But it has not been assigned.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay.
So I can give the whole update. Yeah.
All right. Hearing none. Looking one last time.
Jennifer, can I
Yes.
just ask one question? Or you were looking for Sarah for training, and I can remember some very heated exchanges in the past with a former board member too, stating that this was a job that was assigned to us and we weren't doing it, and we weren't doing this and we weren't doing that. Maybe that would be a really good 15-20 minute overview from Sarah too, is what our actual functions and duties are. I mean, you can read in statute, but like you said too, the legislature changes one thing but doesn't kind of catch where it changes things everywhere else in different laws. And just these resolutions we did today, kind of notice that, and that may be a really good that may be really good for us to kind of review as a group again. What is our core functions, and I think it would help us a lot. And are we really doing what we're required to do and what we're allowed to do? And because I'm sure there's some required stuff, and I'm sure there's stuff that we may be able to do. So yeah, I'll shut up.
Well, and that's exactly what Sarah is doing, and that's exactly the conversation that we're having, because you were correct. I mean, there are stuff in statute that the board isn't doing. I think the agencies kind of informally picked up that work. And if you go back to pre-2012, when the board oversaw the Department of Education, we sort of oversaw the work that the then department was doing. we are not staffed. We all have day jobs. So it makes sense that the agency has picked up this work that the board used to be charged with overseeing. But there are, these disconnects in statute where it looks like on paper, and that's not all of the things that the board should be doing that the board isn't doing. But I think there are a lot of things where it still says board, and it's really not the board. I think it's just because that work was never separated and that delegation was never made. And so again, like to your point, there are a lot of policies and procedures and obligations in statute that the board, technically speaking, is not fulfilling for very good understandable reasons. And I think this is so when you and I mean, like, I've got the green books behind me, like they're voluminous, and the state board is sort of sprinkled throughout there. So this is background work under the contract that Sarah has been working on. I don't think she's finished that work because I've not heard otherwise. But it is voluminous work that is really going to set the table, for us to be able to move methodically to, stand up a board that is clear to board members and members of the public what it is that the State Board of Education does. So I agree with you. Tammy?
Sarah, do you have all the documents from the Roles and Responsibilities Committee that we did a number of years ago on this? And then I know there were also documents pulled together where board members have actually gone through statute and itemized all this. I just hate for you to be duplicating work that we've already done. Because when we we already made recommendations on splitting up roles. We voted on it by a board. I mean, I chaired that committee. And then we also, I know as in preparation for our retreat in August, there was materials pulled together by board members where they went through statute and they itemized all this, chapter and verse of where we were cited and all of that. I just hate to burn through additional resources having you do all that work that the board has already done.
Yeah, that is not my focus at the moment. I do have access to any of the public, public documents, but if you have anything that you want to share with me, feel free to share. Yeah.
Well, and I do know, Tammy, I mean, I think what you're talking about is the work that Kim did to sort of pull all of that together. I do believe Sarah has access to that. And I had also mentioned to Sarah that Emily Simmons from the agency had also gone through. Sarah has that as well. So she's not recreating the wheel here, but she is doing her, what Kim had put together was not comprehensive. It was not the full universe. I will say that.
I'm not referring to that. I'm referring to the roles and work by the roles of responsibility, where it was Oliver and Dan and myself and others. I think Tom, you were on that committee as well, when we actually thought through all of this a number of years ago and made recommendations about how to split up the roles and things along those lines. We presented to the legislature on that.
If you have documents, please do send.
The board voted on that.
If you have them, please do send.
Okay.
Yeah.
I can try to dig all that up.
Yep.
All right. Anything else? Okay, hearing none, I'm going to turn it to public to be heard. If there are members of the public who wish to address the board, you can raise your hand, or if you're calling in, *5 on your phone. Not seeing anybody. So with that, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll move that we adjourn.
Thank you, Rich. Is there a second? Seconded by Tom. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please raise your hand and signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right. We stand in adjournment. Thank you all. Have a great rest of your day.